told the FBI agent he was afraid. He was afraid of consequences from
So
the
he
Bidens.
didn't. This man, he didn't give you guys the copy of the hard drive and pass over the actual hard drive to the FBI.
No, he gave it to the FBI first.
Okay.
And he waited 4 or 5 months.
Why do you think he held on to it?
Well, he held on to 4. He held on to 4 copies of it. He gave 2 to friends of his in case he was killed. And he was. Don't laugh. People
Serious, yeah.
The presidency is at stake here, and we have some very dangerous people involved.
Fair. Welcome back, Daily Caller. I am senior White House correspondent Christian Daytalk. I'm sitting down today with none other than Mayor Rudy Giuliani, President Trump's personal attorney. We're going to be talking about all of the Hunter Biden news that's come out over the past few days. Mr. Mayor, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Christian.
Before we begin, I want to remind everyone at home to click subscribe, click the bell. That way these interviews will get pushed right to your phone as soon as they get published. So let's take a step back because there's been new allegations. Obviously, there's these piecemeal stories coming out, but I think maybe even a bigger story is the reaction that Twitter and Facebook took. Did you expect outright censorship when these stories were being worked on by you guys?
I didn't think about it. I probably would have expected it if I thought about it. Or maybe I would have thought it was too dangerous a move for them to do it, because I think they've basically turned the entire Republican Party against them. And probably a lot of moderates. I mean, this is a very, very unusual level of censorship. This is the kind of thing that used to happen in the Soviet Union, in Nazi Germany, in Cuba. I mean, this is yes, they're not government, but they act like a government. They have that kind of control. They have control of a public facility, a very public facility. And they're no longer acting as neutral, just a bulletin board, which is what got them their exemption from Section 230. They are now making editorial choices. The minute they do that, they become publishers, and they're subject to regulation like everyone else. And they're subject to lawsuit. And I think there should be a lawsuit against them. I think there should be a major lawsuit against them for This was an extraordinarily important article in a major American newspaper. You can agree with it or disagree with it, but there was a right for people to know about this and make their own evaluation of it. But it reminds me of Joe Biden, who says we don't deserve to know. I mean, where in America could a public official or a news outlet determine that the American public doesn't have the right to know? I mean, that's a concept that's alien to America, to Americans. That's a concept that comes out of a totalitarian government. And I guess these people have become so wealthy, they think they're dictators because they're acting like dictators. Mm-hmm. And this has to be stopped for the good of this country. I mean, free speech is an enormously important part of who we are. And this was yesterday was a terrible day for free speech in America, one of the worst.
I agree with you. I think the American people do deserve to know, and that was sort of one of the reasons Twitter claimed they had the authority to censor this, is because of your proximity to the president. Obviously, you're a supporter of his re-election campaign, and they were curious how you came into possession of this hard drive in the first place. Did you or Steve Bannon or any of the other people supporting the president have any prior contact with this Mac shop owner prior to him reaching out to you?
No, I mean, first of all, the premise on which I think Twitter took it down was it was hacked. Well, they're dead wrong. It wasn't hacked, so that's a lie. Of course, they said it without knowing, which means they just pulled a lie out of the air.
Yeah.
And this is really part of a conspiracy with Biden. I mean, when I first put this story out, Biden wrote a letter to all the media, which he thinks he controls, and told them to keep me off. Yeah. Imagine a candidate writing a letter saying to keep somebody off. I mean, how frightened is he of me? Plus, they've spent the last 8 or 9 months attacking me every way they can in every one of their little surrogate operations that they own, like the Washington Post and the New York Times and CNN and MSNBC and the whole crew of. They're not even broadcast. I mean, they're basically like Pravda was to the Soviet Union. Mm-hmm. They just publish the Democratic talking points. And sometimes they even use the same key words so you can figure it out. They're pathetic. I mean, it really is a terrible thing. So the way I came to have this, my lawyer was contacted by this gentleman who owns this store that fixes hard drives. And Hunter Biden had come into the store, probably a year earlier, turned over 3 devices. The guy couldn't fix one, fixed the other immediately, and had to keep the hard drive. Hunter Biden came back in 2 days and brought him some kind of a keyboard that would help. And within a fairly short period of time, he had it fixed. And then he started calling Biden to pick it up. Couldn't get any answer, couldn't get any response, didn't get paid. And for some reason, Hunter Biden never showed up. Now, one of the reasons may be that the gentleman says that Hunter Biden was so drunk that he had a little trouble even getting his name out. And since I've now looked at the hard drive, I find that to be very credible, because this was probably a bit of an exaggeration, but it looks like he's high on crack about every other day for the last 5 or 6 years.
Before we move on, I do want to back up a second, because again, another criticism is of the timeline that this was released. You just said he dropped this off about a year ago. I think one of the screenshots of a quote from the Mac shop said, they basically have the right to, take any property that's not claimed within 90 days. 90 days, there's a lot of time in between that and a year. So why is this just coming out now?
Well, because they gave it to the FBI.
Okay.
The FBI took it. The FBI agent told the FBI agent he was afraid. He was afraid of consequences from
So
the
he
Bidens.
didn't, this man, he didn't give you guys the copy of the hard drive and pass over the actual hard drive to the FBI?
No, he gave it to the FBI first.
Okay.
And he waited 4 or 5 months.
Why do you think he held on to it?
Well, he held on to 4. He held on to 4 copies of it. He gave 2 to friends of his in case he was killed. And he was, don't laugh. People
Serious, yeah.
The presidency is at stake here, and we have some very dangerous people involved.
Fair.
So, I've been in law enforcement long enough to know that you don't laugh at that. The reality is he kept 4 copies. He gave 2 to friends in case he was killed. He waited about 4 months, 5 months. I'm not sure, because my lawyer is the one who talked to him about this. So I'm reciting what Bob told me. And then he sent some letters around to various Republicans thinking they'd be interested in it. And apparently we were the first to respond. And or the only one to respond, or the first, or whatever. And my lawyer, Bob Costello, who's a former assistant U.S. attorney, former chief of the criminal division, represented George Steinbrenner, very, very excellent lawyer, made contact with him, went down and visited with him, spent a good deal of time, I'm going to say a week, studying it, making sure that it was legal. What he saw was a contract that was signed by Hunter Biden, which said, a form contract that was signed by Hunter Biden, that said that if he didn't pick it up in 90 days, that it would be abandoned and become the property of the merchant. It had been abandoned at that point by about 6 months, so it was clearly the property of the merchant. He checked the law on that to be sure, and then he went over it to do the best he could to validate it. Numbers that he could check on, events that he knew. Was he accurate about it? Was Biden accurate about it? Actually, we didn't really validate it until I got it, because although he knew more about the hard drive, I know the case backwards and forwards.
Right.
And I have an enormous amount of information from confidential informants. So, for example, I could see dates there that only Hunter Biden would know, because they haven't been published anywhere. I'll give you an example. Confidential informant told us about a meeting he had at the State Department. He gave me a specific date. He told me he remembered it because Hunter Biden was taken in the back door so that it wouldn't be registered. And he went to see Deputy Secretary of State Tony Blinken. Well, that's not registered anywhere, except from this confidential informant telling me and another investigator this. And that date squared exactly with the date in the hard drive and in the text message. There are about 3 more like that. And there are 2 others that I'd rather not reveal to him.
Was the vice president at that meeting at the State Department? Do you know for sure?
It wasn't a meeting with the vice president. It was a meeting with the Deputy Secretary of State.
Okay.
It was not recorded and should have been recorded, because it's a meeting that falls under the Foreign Agents Registration Act, of which there were probably about 6 or 7 blatant violations of it by Hunter Biden, including the meeting with the vice president. He never registered as a foreign agent. That's exactly what Paul Manafort went to prison for. And unless we're really going to stick with this, Republicans go to prison and Democrats don't when they do the same or worse, then he belongs in prison, the way Paul Manafort was put in prison. Beyond that, as you go through it, particularly when you go through the photographs, it's obviously his. I mean, nobody else would have that horrible, disgusting, I can't even describe it.
Well, speaking of photographs, what the New York Post published, another criticism that people on the internet have levied is that the metadata pulled from those images that they upload don't exactly square with each other. It would appear that some are the native files, some are copies created by the New York Post. Did you turn over different files to the New York Post, or
turned over exactly what I had, and they've been copied 4 or 5 times. Yes, it isn't the original. The FBI has the original.
Right.
So, I mean, all they're saying is the obvious. I mean,
well, the metadata would still match if it's a copy of the hard drive.
Oh, come on.
No?
This is pettifogging nonsense.
Well, the reason
the main thing is that we can deal with the process all you want, but nobody dealt with the process when they stole Donald Trump's tax returns and published it without verifying anything. And they didn't even have an unnamed source for it. The New York Times just published it. They even said we have an unnamed source. So what's the difference between that and this? This has 3 people on the record, now 4. It's a hard drive and text messages. If you read them, it's almost impossible that they're not Hunter Biden's. They haven't denied any of them yet.
Yeah.
And let him deny the photographs of him smoking crack. Has he denied it? Has he denied that he's the guy with the crack pipe? There are about 20 of those.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do want to talk about those text messages because new information came out on Thursday. But before we begin, I want to clarify.
Yeah, they haven't said the text message is inaccurate.
Well, the reason I brought up the metadata.
Plus, it has to be his.
Sir. I mean,
no. I don't want to spend my time arguing process with you. I mean, that's the nonsense that I get from the liberal press all the time. Let's cover the story first. Usually, the way it works is when you have a massive crime reveal like this, you cover the crime and then you figure out how did the investigator get it. You don't try to figure out first how did the investigator get it, so we can make it incredible. I mean, so this isn't a useful interview.
Well, let's talk about the crime then.
Yeah, let's talk about the crime, and then I can explain to you that it's verified about 20 different ways. Look, I've been doing this for 50 years.
Right.
So I can assure you this is perfectly legal, and this is his hard drive. His lawyer called this guy the day it came out. That's about the best verification you can have for it. He said, "Do you have Hunter Biden's drive?" I'm not sure what the source said, but I have the email of that. So his lawyer thinks it's his. Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's a lot of crap that it isn't his. Of course it's his. And as I said, they haven't denied it. And let them deny specific ones. We're going to put them out. Let them say that the text from Hunter Biden to his daughter, saying that for the last 30 years, Hunter Biden has been supporting the family, and that the father requires him to kick back 50% of his salary to the vice president. Let them say that's not true. And then let's go look at how Joe has these multi-million-dollar houses, and he's never made more than $150,000. Everybody's always wondered, gee, how does Joe have these houses? I'll tell you how he has the houses. The bribe money that Joe's been collecting for 30 years goes to his brother, and it goes to his son, and they kick back 50% to him, and they cover all his bills, which is really a Chinese method of corruption, which is documented in the book by Schweiker, Secret Empires, Chapter 1. He describes how Americans like him, John Kerry, the Clintons, adopted this Chinese method of take the money in, have your expenses taken care of, kind of the way Al Sharpton lives. Have the money taken in. They pay for everything. I mean, do you know that Hunter Biden paid for his stepdaughter's half-sister's entire education? Why wouldn't Joe Biden pay for that education?
I mean, I think the question is, we don't know that yet. So when are we going to get to see?
Well, you'll get to see it, but
you're a prosetter. We need direct evidence, right? Not circumstantial evidence.
Well, you already have direct evidence that you're ignoring. You have direct evidence of a memo that was put out, a text that was put out, that says specifically, I have to, all during the time that I been disrespected, says Hunter Biden to his daughter, I've been the one who supported this family for 30 years. And unlike Pop, I'm not going to require you to give half your salary to me. I didn't write that. He did. He hasn't denied he wrote it. What does that mean? Why is a son giving half his salary to his father and paying all of his father's expenses, unless the son is a conduit for bribe money? Mm-hmm. We used to call him a bag man. That's exactly what he is. And explain to me who would hire Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden is not just unqualified, he's a stone cold drug addict. He was thrown out of the Navy 3 months before he got hired by the crooked Ukrainian for $2 million a year. That's actually what he was paid, $2 million a year. You think the crookedest oligarch in Ukraine is going to hire a stumble-bum drug addict to be on his board? Or do you think the more logical thing is that he was hiring the vice president who had just been put in charge of giving out all the money in the Ukraine? I think the second is much more logical than the first. And not only that, there are 5 witnesses that say that nobody will bring to the United States. They're keeping them in Ukraine because inside the government is protecting Joe Biden. And if you want to get their testimony, go to rudyscommonsense.com, episodes 1 through 7 and 8 through 11.
It's a pretty expert plug.
They're all testifying there. No anonymous sources here. These are all people willing to come to the United States and testify that Joe Biden was paid somewhere between $12 and $20 million in bribes. The conduit for it was the ridiculous idea that Hunter Biden was going to be paid that kind of money. Hunter Biden, I don't think, ever showed up in Ukraine, much less did anything of any significance. He was a bagman, a conduit, and he explains exactly then the method of how he gets the money to Joe in what is a blockbuster. I don't think I've ever had a piece of evidence as strong as that in the 100 cases that I prosecuted.
When you say he explained it, is it bank documents? Is it like an actual cash flow?
It's a text message to his daughter, explaining to his daughter.
Well, is there more than the text message that came out?
Well, I don't know what else you need. What would you like him to do?
Well, I mean, for starters, I'd love to see all of.
Well, that's usually enough in a criminal case. I mean, people don't usually, write long testimonials about how they commit a crime. A text message like that is about what you get, which is, I don't know, about as direct as it can be. I mean, you can fight with it if you want. But it's his words. He said, "I've been supporting the family for 30 years, and I got to kick back half my salary to my father." And then if you look at where Joe lives, you realize the salary he had all those years, and that for years it's been a question, how did Joe buy these houses? You kind of get the idea. The way he bought these houses is his family sold his office for 30 years. They held the money. They gave him half here and there, and they paid for everything.
Okay, well, let's look towards the election. Obviously, another criticism is that obviously this makes
anybody
Hunter
have anything
Biden
good
look
to say
bad.
about this?
Well, I'm just curious. I mean, the internet is trying to poke holes in it. This is why we came to you. You're the only person on the planet, really, who's seen the bulk of this thing. People are saying it's a political hit job. Why not just drop it all in full and show the breadth of this corruption?
Because they will go ahead and do everything they can to undermine it, which is what they've done before. We're going to be in control of putting it out, and we're going to catch them in lies, which we've already done. We're going to catch them in more lies. And by the time 10 days is out, you'll have the whole thing. But by that time, they will have told 10 lies. Or maybe he won't come out of that basement because he's so scared. He hasn't been out of the basement in 2 days. He's going to show up tonight. But I mean, that's very unusual. The minute this came out, 9:15, put the lid on. They've been hiding him in the basement.
Yeah, it's true. I haven't really seen...
pretty much the reaction of a decrepit little criminal, which is what he is. Look, you shouldn't be surprised. Joe Biden cheated his way through law school. He plagiarized in law school. I happen to know one of his law school classmates who introduced me to him 35 years ago. And he told me, very nice guy, he's so stupid you can't imagine. He couldn't get through law school. He plagiarized and then he cheated to get through law school. Well, the plagiarizing sometimes can go away. Character can reform. It didn't. In the late 1980s, when he was running for president, he was caught plagiarizing numerous things. John F. Kennedy speeches, Robert F. Kennedy speeches. And then most unusually, he plagiarized not just the speech, but the life of Neil Kinnock. In other words, he said things that Neil Kinnock said in the speech that were untrue about him. He said he came from a long line of coal miners. Didn't come from a long line of gold miners. He had one uncle who worked as an accountant in the coal mines. He said he was the first person in his family, like Neil Kinnock said, to go to college. He wasn't. He was the 8th person in his family to go to college. The guy was plagiarizing, in his 40s, in his 20s, in his 40s. How many lies has he told? And so it's not unusual that a guy like that would set himself up with his creepy little brother, who's a lobbyist, in trouble over and over again. Newspaper articles constantly about how he's selling the office. Joe's answer is, I don't know my family's business. Well, you only get to say that once or twice. You don't have to say it 8 times. I mean, Kate Corleone only got to say it once. The Godfather. So, this is the guy we're dealing with.
Yeah.
He's unfortunately and tragically, the Democratic Party is so consumed with hatred for the President of the United States that it takes away, hatred takes away your conscience, it takes away your judgment, it takes away your rationality. It even has you justifying things that are illegal and dishonest because you think, oh my God, we got to get rid of that person. He's so terrible. We're allowed to cheat. And that's exactly what's going on. The whole plot against Trump made up by Hillary Clinton. And this guy has made a mockery out of being a senator and a vice president. His family, you can't deny this, his family has become millionaires while he's in office, and they don't have a skill. And one of them is a drug addict who's been in and out of rehabilitation maybe 5-6 times. So you tell me, what did they invent that made them millionaires? What product did they sell? I know the product they sold. They sold Joe Biden's public office, and they sold out America.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I do appreciate your time. Obviously, you're super busy, and we want to get to the bottom of this, and that's why I've been pressing you on this. I'm gonna leave it at this. Will you be willing to give us a copy of this hard drive so that we can look at it? No,
I'll give it to you
in 10
if
days,
and when I put it out, and in the time sequence that we determine.
So are we not going to see the entire hard drive at some point?
You'll eventually see the whole thing, probably. Or enough of it so that you will be absolutely convinced that the Biden family is a crime family. And been engaged in crime, as pretty much Hunter said in his little text to his daughter. They've been doing it for 30 years, and he's been kicking money back to his father for 30 years. Those are his words, not mine.
Well, you're the prosecutor. You've seen the evidence. We want to see the evidence.
You will.
We're on pins and needles.
Every day. Just think about it. Every day there'll be a new piece of evidence. Today, one of the situations with the members of the Communist Party that he was in business with was revealed. It showed that they were negotiating a deal to put together a company called Hudson, and the company was made up of Xi Jinping, who is a high-level member of the Communist Party and an intelligence operative, now kind of living at the bottom of the Yangtze River because he's been killed. Stanley Ho, another member of the Communist Party who since has been arrested, tried and convicted in federal court. First person he called when he got arrested, this Chinese communist criminal, was James Biden, because he's James Biden's partner. And then the third Chinese communist is still there. He's an American citizen, but he's alleged to be a spy for the Chinese government. He's a partner with the Bidens. So then on the Biden side, there's the Biden family. There's Hunter, James, and James's wife. Except when you look at the bottom of the document distributing percentages, there's a little note that says 10% for H for the big guy. Who's the big guy? Well, I'll tell you who the big guy is. It's easy to figure out. When they're distributing keys for the new office, top of the list for keys for an office being funded by a Chinese communist is Joe Biden. And then second is Jill Biden. Why are they getting keys to this office? It sounds pretty plausible that he was going to get 10% equity and then his usual 50% and Hunter taking care of expenses. Because the Chinese government was not hiring Hunter Biden. The Chinese are not stupid. They're not going to pay $10 million a year and 50% of the profits to Hunter Biden, they're going to pay it to who they think is the next president of the United States so they can jam him up. And when you look at these photographs that are disgusting and horrible, the Chinese have every single one of them. The Chinese have every single one of them, probably 10 times more. Because what the Chinese government has been doing, and a country was totally undefended against this, is setting Biden up, putting him in a position where he's totally compromised. They've now given him so much money, he's totally compromised. They now have pictures of his son doing things that I can't describe, some of which are illegal.
Why not? This is the internet. You can describe anything.
Yeah, you'll get to see it. I don't have to describe
I want to see it, man. I'm trying to get something out of you.
Well, you'll get to see it.
All right.
But the reality
I'm gonna hold
is,
you to that.
the reality is that very, very simple analysis of all this, if you understand intelligence operations, Chinese have been setting them up since about 2014. They've been buying Joe, which is why they got him to be so compliant when he was negotiating for us and trying to get them to remove from the islands that they contest with Japan. He failed completely. But the son came back with $1 billion pledge to his totally ridiculous little private equity fund.
Well, Mr. Mayor, again,
right.
Thank you.
Thank
I'm going
you.
to keep hammering you. We want those files because,
Okay.
again, it'll
in due
prove it.
time.
All right.
Okay.
Well, we'll have to do this again. And to everyone at home, click subscribe if you like this interview with Mayor Giuliani. Hit the bell. They'll all get pushed to your phone. I'm Christian Daytalk. We'll see you guys next time. All right, we're good.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you very much.